personal opinion is that you all know where I stand on this. Do I think justice was served? No. I've heard that they wanted their day in court with TV cameras so America could know the truth, but no, they chose to hide behind secrecy and broker a deal to circumvent the judicial system.
The head of the Chicago PD, they're reacting to prosecutors dropping all charges against actor Jussie Smollett. You remember this story. Smollett, he was charged with lying to the police about a bias attack. He said he was attacked for being gay and African American, and the attackers put a noose around his neck and also yelled, "This is Trump's country." But the case, it all started unraveling after the cop said he paid 2 Nigerian brothers to wear masks, pour bleach on him, and shout the slurs. Again, he cannot make this up. They even produced the checks they used to pay the brothers, and those guys admitted their part in the scheme. Mayor Rahm Emanuel also livid about the charges being dropped. Here he is.
Mr. Smollett is still saying that he is innocent, still running down the Chicago Police Department. How dare him? This is a whitewash of justice.
Now, this is what the mayor's talking about. Here is Smollett.
I've been truthful and consistent on every single level since day one. I would not be my mother's son if I was capable of one drop of what I've been accused of.
About not quitting when you're ahead. Now, to make things even more confusing, this is the prosecutor saying he believed that Smollett lied to the police.
Do you think Mr. Smollett did what he was charged with doing?
Yes, we stand behind the CPD's investigation in this case, the great work, the tremendous work that they did in investigating this case.
Do you consider him innocent?
No.
Okay, so the deal to drop charges, including community service and a $10,000 penalty. Now, the prosecutors, well, they released this short statement. After reviewing all of the facts and circumstances of the case, including Mr. Smollett's volunteer service in the community and agreement to forfeit his bond to the city of Chicago, we believe this outcome is a just disposition and appropriate resolution to the case. I want to bring in our legal panel. Jim Kasuris, a criminal defense attorney in Manhattan, sits on the board of directors of the New York City Criminal Bar Association, also frequently lecturing at New York Law School and the Bar Association in Queens and New York City. Doug Van Oys, founding partner of Carsten Van Oys, focusing on corporate misconduct. He was selected by the Legal 500 as one of the most influential trial lawyers in the country. And Mayo Bartlett, an attorney at the law offices of Mayo Bartlett PLLC and a former chief of the Bias Crimes Unit at the Westchester County DA's office. Mayo, I start with you. Did you ever have a case, forget about as high profile as this, where it seems so cut and dried, and then all of a sudden you guys decided, never mind?
Well, there are cases where you have people dead to rights.
You rationalize this one. Go ahead.
I have to say that the majority of the cases that you have, especially if it's brought by the federal authorities or by a state agency other than local police, because they have to respond to things that happen immediately. Normally there's a decent investigation, and quite often, you can convict somebody. But then you have to ask what a just result is. And quite often a just result means even though you have great evidence, it doesn't necessarily lead to a conviction. Now, that being said, normally the people who benefit from what we might call an adjournment in contemplation of dismissal don't go out and do a press conference and proclaim their innocence. And normally there's a little bit more involved than I'm just going to forfeit $10,000. So if he had engaged in a mental health program and maybe it lasted 6 months, a year.
Outrage, please?
Yes, I mean, come on.
You have to look at it in its entirety, and there are a lot of reasonable results. But again, the behavior is somewhat.
As a white guy here at the table, just say, what he did wasn't just make up a story.
Sure.
He used the worst racial elements, minimizing racism that had been inflicted on so many others, and all for personal gain. Clearly, he didn't get any scintilla of humility after this. And to say that he learned his lesson, which is basically what they said here, clearly not, Mayo.
No, I'm not saying that. But what I am saying is that there's always a lot more than what we're aware of. And we don't have all the information. So, look, again, if he's suffering from mental health, then I think that a mental health court would have been appropriate.
Okay.
I think to dismiss it this quickly is a bit bizarre. You wouldn't anticipate it happening under these circumstances.
You never had a case here where the prosecutors just said, hey, never mind, Jimmy, right?
Yes, it's true, I'm speechless. No, this is outrageous.
it's not, you know, if they have a complaint and they arrest you and then your lawyer sits down with them and presents mitigating circumstances and you try to work out a resolution. They indicted him. They put their evidence into a grand jury. They had a rock-solid case. They returned 18 charges, many of which are serious felonies. And then for it to disappear, with his lawyer coming out and having a press conference saying...
Threatening now to sue the cops.
And defining Nale Prosecute as this is an outright dismissal. It is a proclamation of innocence, and in famous words that we've been hearing, complete exoneration. And then for the prosecutor to say, oh, no, we think he did it, but we have bigger fish to fry. Because that was the other thing that they said. And then for him to stand up without any humility and profess his innocence, this is outrageous.
But Jim, doesn't that bother you more than the actual result, is their behavior? Because look at all the people that never get charged. So you can have people who run major financial institutions that steal billions of dollars, and there's no charge whatsoever.
The result bothers me. The result bothers me. If you want to do a decline prosecution, have him show some humility, maybe it would have made sense here. But how many of our clients are sitting with felonies? How many of our clients are sitting with misdemeanors or may have served time in jail on lesser charges because they don't have the notoriety, because they're not famous? This is
And how many
outrageous.
are more deserving that would never be given that
And for
opportunity?
the police chief to come out and say this is a travesty, it smells like
all
deal.
you guys were prosecutors, and Doug, my whole thing is, how does the prosecutor's office look at the cops now? I mean, how do you deal with law enforcement and say, you guys not only brought all the evidence, stuck their necks out on the line here after they were accused of the worst, okay? But the police chief personally, you know, he made a personal statement when he went out there. And then for them to do it the way they did, without even the courtesy of letting the cops know what they were about to do. Now, there's reports here that the former chief of staff of Michelle Obama, who knew the Smollett family quite well, she put a phone call in. It just is bizarre.
Well, Rich, I mean, for the people listening, there's always a tension between law enforcement and the prosecutor's office because the police believe they bring a charge, a good charge, and then it's plea bargained down. This is the worst case I've ever seen where they were actually dared to go out and investigate this. They put it together. They got the evidence they needed, videotape, checks, and they weren't even consulted as to why. There may be reasons why this is done, and this may be a just result at the end of the day, but the process that went on here is completely bad. And the message it sends to everybody that's watching, we often talk about prosecution of cases that sort of it's leveraged into so everybody else can see why you don't do these things. Now this is a clear case where, you know, it's plea bargained down to nothing, to literally nothing. The police are obviously outraged. This is the worst possible message in a city, by the way, that has huge problems with crime. Absolutely. I mean, this is a terrible
and huge
thing.
problems with trust in the police. And now this comes down. And Mayo, we always talk about unequal justice. Basically, yeah, keep the 10 grand. What kind of a message is if somebody can't make bail like we always talk about, right?
I don't disagree with anything that Jim or Doug have said, except I don't think it's the worst thing that's ever happened because when the police don't get charged, then there is no outrage from the chief of police. So when you have them on video shooting people in the back and there are no charges,
right here.
No, that's correct. However, I just have to say that, you know, when you have this type of outrage, we have to take a step back and look at how many times no police officers are charged when they're on video committing a crime. So,
there is outrage, okay? Maybe you could talk about a blue wall and all that, but in this particular case, I mean, this guy used the media. Let's just remind everybody what this was about. This was about him wanting to get a better deal out of a television show, okay? So he orchestrated this whole fiasco, played the racial card, when called out at, went on national TV, right? In a livid voice, played again the racial card and dared everyone. And then he invokes his family here once again, once he was getting the pass of a lifetime. Finally, I know I got to hit a break here, but I know we all know what double jeopardy is, Jim, but there is a possibility that the feds could get involved, correct?
They can. And double jeopardy is only a prohibition against prosecuting somebody for the same crime twice. Now, there are other crimes that the feds could charge him with based on the communications and so on and so forth. So they are supposedly investigating.
But Rich, just last month we were talking about the Chicago police where you have video of them shooting the man who had no weapon, and apparently we've forgotten all about that because Jussie Smollett comes along and he gets this.
No, but
this
I guess my
resolution.
point is, Mayo, if we follow that logic, every miscarriage of justice should beget another miscarriage
No,
of
not at
justice,
all.
and it should be in effect, well, they got to pass on this and we get another
Not
one
at
over
all,
here.
but I think we have to at least look and realize that this is no worse than that. They're both bad.
They are.
We can agree. We can certainly agree to that.
So we've come full circle. And I will also say, it'll be fascinating to see, given the audacity of that press conference he did, if he actually follows through with a suit, if he'll actually sue his employers because he's not on the show now, and if he doesn't get his job back after he claims he was exonerated. We've heard that term lately, right? Where will the chutzpah end? And we will see. Okay, coming up next, he went after President Trump, and now prosecutors are going after him. Michael Avenatti, he is fighting 2 serious cases against him, both involving real serious charges. The panel, they'll return to hash it out, and I've got a question for him. Is what he did not just criminal, but does it happen more often than we think? We'll talk about that after this.